Okay, everybody. This is the second PowerShell class, hopefully 2 of 6 if everything goes right. We started out a little rough last month with the whole computer switcheroo thing and troubles with demos and all that stuff, but I've got a brand new laptop. Hopefully everything's going to go okay this week. I was going to start out this session with a little bit of a recap from last time, but I decided to have a little fun instead. So instead of the recap, I thought I would do my top 10 list of how PowerShell is better than your wife. Everybody game for that? Yeah, no kidding. Okay, the number 10 reason is PowerShell will help you keep track of your girlfriend's phone numbers. Number 9, PowerShell doesn't laugh if your object is too small. Number 8, at around 2 megs, PowerShell is a lot lighter than your wife. Number 7, the child object that comes out of PowerShell's pipeline are never from someone else's input objects. Number 6, PowerShell only spits out what you want it to. Number 5, PowerShell doesn't mind if you play with other scripting languages. Number 4, when you make a mistake in PowerShell, it only tells you once. Number 3, you don't have to beg to put objects into PowerShell. Number 2, PowerShell never complains because your object leaves the pipeline too quickly. And the number 1 reason that PowerShell is better than your wife is if you do something wrong in PowerShell, it doesn't stop responding for 3 days and then make you guess what you did. Now, I realize that we're in a mixed crowd. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Are those all original?
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes. I realize we're in a mixed crowd, so at the end of the session, I'm going to give the top 10 list of how PowerShell is better than your husband. Now, I have some giveaways back here. We have, something like 70 giveaways. I went to Sapien after the last class, and they're the guys who make Primal Script, the editor. And I asked them for some giveaways because I was teaching this class. So they've got a lot of really nice leather notebooks and some demo CDs back here for us. And they've got some really nice pens inside. And he also gave us a really nice treat. They're calling it the Primal Script Enterprise Resource Kit. But what it's actually got in it, it's got Primal Script Enterprise, but it's also got Sapien's full video PowerShell training series by Don Jones. And it's got a beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And it is a phenomenal training class. It's not going to teach you everything you need to know about PowerShell, but any of you who have ever seen any of Don Jones's VB script stuff, he is an absolutely phenomenal instructor. And I've got 3 of these to give away during this session, and only during this session. And I kicked it around a lot how I was going to get rid of them. And I made up my mind. I'm going to give them away to the best That's What She Said during the presentation. So you guys catch me off guard if you can, and shout out a good one, and you may end up with a beautiful video training series. So regardless of what I said, I am going to recap a little bit. I just can't help myself. I actually had the things here that I was going to recap, and I managed to have left that in another thing. Anyway, so, and I'm just going to run through this real quick. This is going to be like 60 seconds, 2 minutes, because we're going to just get on to what we need to do this time. Remember last time to get services, you can run the get service, right? That's only for the local machine. If you want to go and get remote services, you have to call the WMI object, the WMI class, okay? As well, I should have used the up arrow for that. You can pipe that to a format table, which isn't going to do you anything at all right here, but if you look right here, and we're going to hit this hard. Come on, guys. I fed you that one. No, I fed you that one. Okay, so, yeah, I know, huh? So if you look up here, it's got status, name, and display name. So what would be the point in doing a format table? Well, that's if you wanted to look at some of the other properties, right? And remember, get member, since these are all .NET objects, will get you all of the members that you can pull back on these objects. Anything that is a method, we'll go ahead and call a verb. It's something that you can do to the object. And anything that is a property, is a piece of information, a piece of metadata you can get off of it. So, buddy, see, if I have to pause, it's just not worth it. So you notice that every one of those that was there is here. You've got display name, you've got status, and name is actually in service name. The commandlet assigns it a new label, but it's actually service name. And then we've got, and then we discussed variables, where you can just define a variable with a $sign and just give it a value right there, right? I can also just display it to the screen. And I think that's as far as we're going to go on the recap. So, oh, and there's one more thing I wanted to recap real quick.
You said we were through, now
Yeah, I know.
my wife, I'm through shopping.
Everything in PowerShell is presented as a drive, so you work with it in a very similar way that you do in DOS. So if I want to do anything to functions or to get environments or aliases or the C drive or anything, all I got to do is go to that drive, and I'm already there. I do that, right? Now I'm on the root of C. Okay, so now we're going to jump into, that was just kind of a warm-up just to kind of get you going in PowerShell. But we are going to stay on variables, and we're going to stay on, and we're going to talk a lot about different ways of working with variables now, because it's really important to understand how to work with variables and what they can do for you and what you can and can't do with them. So I suppose probably the best place to start is with paths. One of the things I really like about PowerShell is you can use variables in paths. And you can't do that in any other language I can think of off the top of my head, and I've been thinking about it for a while, especially in T-SQL. That's why we end up in so much dynamic SQL when we're coding, and we have to do it in VB and C# and all that, right? So if I want to define something like S drive equals, right, I can just say like that, and it takes me there, and it automatically parses that variable and gives me the value and puts it into the command line instead of making me build that string and call it separately, which is just, buggy, and it's hard for, and it's bad for security, and it's ridiculous to try to troubleshoot and all of that stuff, right? So this is one of the things that they really got right. I'll move that up to the top. And along with that, let's go ahead and talk about escape characters, because everybody has to have an escape character. And in PowerShell, the escape character is the backtick, and that's that guy right there. And the backtick is that little backwards apostrophe that's underneath the tilde just to the left of the 1 key. I think it was Peter a couple months ago that gave me a hard time about calling that a backtick, but what do you want me to do? That's what it's called, right? So you've got some built-in escape characters. I think I still have my A there, don't I? Let's see if I can get my cursor out of the way. There we go. Okay, so A still hello world. So, yeah, there we go. If I wanted to escape this and say put a tab in there, now I've got a tab between them. If I wanted to escape it and put a new line in there, now I've got hello world on separate lines. Fairly straightforward escape character stuff, right? And everybody here knows what an escape character is, right? It's kind of like a trace flag. It tells it to ignore the default behavior and more or less take what you're saying, the very next thing you say literally, right? So we get into some interesting things here when you're doing escape characters. So let's say that I actually had a folder on my hard drive called S drive, and I wanted to actually switch to that folder, right? So in this case where I am right now, if I wanted to say, it's going to take me to see downloads because that's the name of the variable that I've set within PowerShell, right? But if I had that drive called S drive, I would have to use a backtick to escape that and tell it to use the literal variable name instead of resolving it to its value, okay? And that really brings us very nicely too, I might add, into the difference between double and single quotes. And this is a very important distinction in PowerShell because you notice how, if I can find it, I used double quotes here right? And I got that. And even inside of the quotes, if I want to say, right, then I can say, where am I? And then, is that right? There we go, hello world. So inside the double quotes, it will still resolve the value of that variable. We talked about that last time, didn't we? So it'll resolve that variable. But if I use single quotes, single quotes are literals, okay? So double quotes will resolve the value, single quotes are literal values, and it should be no surprise that in the single quotes, the backtick doesn't work. It prints the backtick because it's a literal, okay? And this kind of stuff, this is the kind of stuff that will just eat you alive if you're not prepared for it. Let me see. Okay, and let's go ahead and look at this variable again. We have this. Remember, we talked about methods before, and we can do a get member. We can pipe that to get member, and if you remember, it's like a handoff, right? The first command hands it off, and then just passes it on down to everything down there. And so these are all the properties and methods that we can do on against A. It tells you right up here that it's a string. So every string will have these values. They've got properties, right? So I can say length, and it's 11. I can call a method, say to upper, and I can make everything upper. I can do replace. I can do, I can find indexes. I can pad left and right and split and all of that stuff, substrings. All of these things are very straightforward.
When you do that to upper, does it actually cast that variable to an uppercase string, or does it just take the output from what that variable is?
Probably more the second one, because if I come back up here and just say A, it's right back where I started, right? So, just lost my mic. Put that on a little tighter now. Nobody? It's going to be a long night. Okay. Nice. We'll vote afterwards. Now y'all are getting it. Okay. Now, as far as, let's see, what did we just do? We just did a to upper. So now let's say that you didn't know what the type was, or you wanted to check programmatically what the type was to see if the value you were getting back was actually what you wanted to, right? It's actually pretty easy. Get type, and it'll tell you right there that it's a string, it comes from the system object, and so on. It's the same thing it told you at the top of the get member. It's just that now you can do it programmatically and check those things, right? For GetType? No, I seriously doubt it, because it's a method inside. Yeah, so I seriously doubt that. But I had something on that until you asked me. And you can actually go a little bit deeper on that as well.
That's what she said.
Thank you. And you could even see that you could even specifically query the namespace, so you can. I know. You can go as deep as you want. Okay. So it's really good to show that you can stack these like that. And now I'm going out of my way to not say things.
That's what she said.
Boy, it sure is cold in here. That's what she said. Okay, now let's talk about connecting to SQL real quick. I'm only going to touch on this just for a second before I move on.
That's what she said.
Guys, just get on a roll, man. Now, let's say you want to connect to the local box. And let me make sure I didn't miss anything before. I don't think so. Everybody remembers that if I had that and did a get member, that it's going to have completely different members than the text did, right? Okay. Now, let's talk about connecting to SQL real quick, and we're gonna connect to our local instance here. If you want to connect to a local instance of SQL, how do you have to do it? You have to say something like, actually, I don't have that thing loaded yet, so let's jump ahead and then we'll come back because there's something I actually have to cover before I do this. See, it started already, hasn't it? Let's talk about profiles. Everybody was beating me over the head last time about profiles, so I got some really good stuff on profiles for you this time. Profiles are, just what they sound like. They're going to load your environment for you every time you load the window. And there are actually 4 levels of profiles, or I'll call it 4 levels of profiles. If I can find my profile thing here. There we go. You've got the profile that loads, that works with all users and all shells, because like SQL has a shell, IIS has a shell, Exchange has a shell, right? So all users, all shells, the current user in all shells, all users and the Microsoft shell only, and then the current user and the Microsoft shell only. Does everybody got that? Okay, so those are in different places. Here, I'll show you. Let's start with the local user, okay? The local user, which is the currently logged in user, their profile is stored in My Documents, Windows PowerShell. And you see here I've got one for Microsoft PowerShell, one for Primal Shell, one for Primal Script. And if I had one just called Profile, which I do right here, that would be for all shells. So this one applies only to me and only when I'm in the Microsoft shell. This one, if I were using it, would apply only to me for all of the shells that I opened, whether I were in Exchange or IIS or SQL. Does everybody get that? And now we'll go down to the global shells, which are nicely enough buried in Windows, Sys32, Windows PowerShell, version 1. Haha, you loving it yet? And this is also where you find all of your help stuff as well, right? And none of these profile files are created by default. When you install PowerShell, there will be no Windows PowerShell folder in My Docs with the Microsoft.PowerShell.ps1 in there. You have to create the folder. You have to create the profile file itself. Same goes with here. There is no profile in here, and there is no Microsoft profile in here. You have to create the files, right? And incidentally, while you're in here, let's go ahead and we'll just touch on this real quick. While you're in here, they've got a lovely Get Started guide. They've got a really quick language reference that teaches you some really cool things, some release notes, a user guide, all of this stuff in the Sys32 Windows PowerShell v.1 folder. And all of these texts, these things just get read like array help and break help and command search help. All of these text files just get read every time you pull up that help. So you could actually add your own stuff in here if you wanted to add some environment-specific stuff on how to teach somebody how to do something specifically. I used to do that with my perfmon counters, because all the explanations, when you hit explain in perfmon, it has a little blurb on what it is, but it doesn't really tell you what it does that much. It doesn't correlate it with anything. So, man, it was about 10 years ago I went through and revamped about 50 of those things and gave really full, nice, detailed explanations and installed them on every server I had. So now when anybody went and hit explain, they got this big thing that just explained everything, how to read it, what to correlate it, what it should be, what to look for elsewise if it's high, and stuff like that. Really cool stuff. And so you can do that in here too if you come across any little tricks.
That's what she said.
So anyway, okay, so that's where to find the profiles. Now let's learn what we can do with them, because there's actually some pretty cool stuff you can do with a profile, and I'm going to show you a little bit of it here, and it's all up for grabs, right? So this is my Microsoft PowerShell, or my Microsoft PowerShell profile. And I've got some stuff in here. Adding the Snapins, setting some local code blocks, a couple functions, okay? So we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, let's talk about how to load the Snapins, because if you go in through SQL, you've already got the Snapins, you're already there, right? But if you come in here, I don't have SQL Server listed as a drive, so I need to load the Snapins in order to do that, right? Add PS Snapin. Nice and long, huh? SQL Server provider Snapin 100, and it'll load it. Good. And then I've got one more, the commandlet Snapin, and it'll load it just like that, right? So now, when I do that, now I've got SQL Server here, and that's what I needed to do before I could do that other demo. But you don't want to do that every single time, right? So that's where the profiles really come in handy. And you notice I've got it commented out here. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do this. I want to show you something. It'll continue. Well, let's talk about real quick. When you change your profile, let's say that I got in here and I was working for 20 or 30 minutes and then decided, oh, wait, I want to do this, or I forgot to do this, or I need to load a different profile or something like that. The problem is when you change your profile, when you add something to the profile that you think of, that, wow, this would be really useful, you have to close the window and reload it in order to reload the profile, a lot like Windows, right? You got to log back in, right? Well, that really sucks because I've got 30 items in my history and I don't want to lose all that stuff, right? So a really good way to do that is you can actually reload the profile without closing the window, and you won't lose your history then. And there are two different ways you can do that. And I'm going to take these back out just to show you. I'm going to load that, but I've still got it. So I'm just going to close this real quick and then bring it back because that's not what I wanted. I'm used to my desktop icon being there. There you go. So there we go. Make that a little bit shorter. So now, I do have. That's because I uncommented them. Damn it. Quit being stupid.
That's what she said.
Oh, come on. That's not even worth it. So I'm going to do that again because I want a nice clean start for this demo just so that there are no mistakes. Resize this window every time. I wonder if there's any way I could control that. Really? Okay, so a PS drive. Okay, now there is no SQL, right? So now I'm going to go. When I was working this out, I kept forgetting to comment and uncomment it, so I troubleshot it for several minutes before I realized, oh crap, I didn't uncomment them. Make sure it's saved. Okay, so I've got this loaded, and there's no SQL Server drive there. It's in my profile now, and now I have to reload it. So a really easy way to do that is to say is to use the environment variable profile, and the dot tells it to execute it. So now I have SQL Server there because it reloaded that profile. Okay? Pretty slick. There's another way to do it, and again, just so that there are no misunderstandings. See, here we go. This is the problem, is I get to commenting and uncommenting things out, so you guys keep me honest because I'm kind of brain dead. So that's a good See, sometimes you just have to laugh and everybody knows what you're talking about.
Just add the instance name after SQL Server.
I'm sorry?
You're writing multiple instances, you just do a / instance name after SQL Server.
You mean to actually connect to SQL?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to cover connecting to SQL. Okay, so now to finish this off, I need to uncomment these guys out. There we go. Okay, now the other way to do it is there's what's known as an invoke operator. And the invoke operator is the ampersand or the and sign, right? And you do that the same way. And you can just invoke that. And you've got your SQL Server drive back again. So, and you can switch profiles, right? I mean, you can, if you're working in one profile and you decide you want another profile, you can load that profile and all is good. And it's really handy if you've got scripts with your own aliases and your own functions that you're going to pass out to all of your boxes. You can pass that profile out with it and just add a little line at the beginning to make sure the script loads that profile when it executes, and you know all your stuff will be good.
Can you unload a profile, or do you have to go to comment here when you not reload it that way?
I don't know. Let's find out, shall we? Because I don't know if you can actually unload a profile. I think what's going to happen. I'm not going to make a half-assed guess. Yeah, see, it's gonna keep it loaded. So I don't know of a way to unload a profile. If you want to unload these things, then you have to drop them manually.
You can write remove PS Snapins.
Yeah. You could alter the script to remove it. Sure.
Equal $sign no. The PS drive. I mean $sign profile equals $sign no.
I don't know that it's that easy to change that. I mean, because you have to reload the window in order to reload your environment variables. Because I was playing with that, I actually got the path to the profile changed, but it wasn't actually reading that new profile. So you can change it, and I think I'm going to talk about that next time. But it's not quite that straightforward, I don't think, unless you can prove me wrong. But don't do it now. I know, huh? Okay, so we're talking about profiles, and a really good use for profiles, and this is something that I use, and I've altered most of my little script blocks here. But you can define a script block as a variable, and then inside of curly brackets you can put a command. So you see here I've got set location SQL Server : /localhost default /databases, right? And anytime you're going to work in PowerShell and you're going to connect to SQL, it gets really old to connect to a box and go down that full path, and connect to another box and go down that full path, connect to another box and go down that full oh geez, stab me in the eye, right? So if you set one of these up for most of the boxes you're going to work with, or for all the boxes you're going to work with, see here I've got local SQL. Let's make sure we have this all added. I think we do. And when I run this again, it'll give me an error because it's already there, but that's fine. There we go. So now if I say invoke local SQL, why are you killing me? Oh, I see. Okay. That might be because I don't have the browser service on.
You have to have the browser service running?
In SQL, in order to resolve an instance. We're about to find out, aren't we? Let's do, and I've got this other little function here that I did, so let's try this down and security center auto. No, the browser service is fine. Something is keeping me from connecting to SQL. Running, agent is on, SQL Server is running. Oh, I bet I know what it is. I had this problem earlier. My box is doing something. It's making me wait. This is my new box, by the way. There we go. Let's bring this guy back up. There we go. Now let's try Ampersand. There we go. So I've found, and I'm not entirely sure why, when I play with the profiles a lot and turn those things on and off and on and off and on and off, and I don't ever close the window, for some reason it does something and I can't connect to SQL. And when I close it back down, everything is good. So you can do this, and again, remember I'm using this invoke operator. Oh, where am I? I'm using this invoke operator right here, the ampersand, to invoke that command. This is just a little script block that I've put in there. But I can do that for all of my boxes. I got a lot of boxes here. The data warehouse SQL, New York, French, dev. So you can do that for all of your things and really save yourself a lot of typing. One of the big things is there's a huge difference between Get service and the WMI provider, the Win32 service provider. All of the methods are different. All of the properties are named something different. So if you get used to using Get service and you do a Get member, come on, start to be smart. Then all of these properties and all of these methods are named something completely different than they are for the Win32 service, right? So it's really handy to just go ahead and use Win32 service all the time, even locally, so that you just get used to using the same things again and again. And I've got these two little functions here that I've got, and one of them is get service info, because it's not get service info, it's just service info. Because if you want to say get WMI object 32. Wow, okay, that's a lot of typing, right? But if I just want to say,
Can you move that up? Reading the bottom is very difficult. There's a lot of heads in there.
nobody, really? Okay, so it also allows me to define a default output as well. So you notice I was also able to see the exact same thing. I wanted to see the start mode and the status. So if I don't want to see what comes in the Win32 service WMI class by default, then I can do this and I can auto size it and I can have the exact same thing for every single box. All I got to do is say service info and then pass it a box name, and I'm going to get the exact same results every single time. I'm not going to have to worry about it, and that's going to automatically be loaded for me in my profile. As well, I've got a nice one here that I've got called service down, and what it does is it does everything the other one did, only I pass it the same argument, only I check where the start mode equals auto and the state does not equal running. So basically that's saying, show me any service that's set to automatically start that isn't in a running state. And you have to say where it's not in a running state, because if you say where it's stopped, it could be in a paused state. It could be in a different state or a hung state other than running. So you want one that's definitely not running and it'll catch everything, right? So I don't think I'm prepared for that. Oh, damn it, that's where my show desktop icon usually is. Get over there. Let me see. And I'll do this for SQL browser, why not? So it's set to automatically start, and I'll stop it. There we go. And now when I come back in here, I get the ones that are set for auto, but they're stopped. And the really cool thing about this, and I'm going to show you this next time if I remember, is you can actually pass arrays to these things. So you can pass an entire array and get a list for 10 boxes, 20 boxes all in one single result set. Actually pretty cool, and you can go through there and start them all as well. So that's some of the really good usefulness of profiles. You can do tons of other things. You notice here I've got a third-party plugin here that I haven't loaded on my box yet, and I kept getting an error when I started at Powershell. I just got tired of seeing it. But you can use this to set up your own aliases, and actually you have to, because aliases are only alive during the current session. So they have to be reloaded every single time. But you can set environment variables. You can do all kinds of things that you want to, and just tons of functions, tons of these little script blocks, which are really, really useful. I've come to just really love these guys right here. And the last thing I think you should really know about profiles is that if you've got, because remember we have 4 levels of profiles, right? All users, all shells. All users Microsoft shell, current user all shells, and current user Microsoft shell. Okay, so that's all 4 of them. And if I've got these guys defined in more than one of those, the first one will load and the rest of them will give errors. It'll continue, but it'll give errors. So if you don't want to see that, just know that they'll step on each other's toes if you've got them loaded with something different. And if you've got and if you define a variable in there and give it a value, and you give it 2 different values in 2 separate profiles, the last profile to load is the one that's going to win. And that can be kind of hard to troubleshoot sometimes, right? Does everybody understand what I just said? Okay, cool. And I think I'm done with profiles. So did I wet everybody's profile whistle? Excellent. Wow, I've got 5 minutes. Excellent. Yeah, I know. Sometimes, and this guy's going to get one just off sheer number. Nobody? Really? Okay, let's see. I had a couple more things planned, but I think that's a pretty good place to stop. We want to make sure that that the sponsors get a chance to do their thing. So I'm going to do my husband list now. Just for the, what is it, 3 ladies in here? Wow, well, okay. Okay, and so this is the top 10 list of how PowerShell is better than your husband. Number 10, PowerShell cleans up after itself. Number 9, when PowerShell does something wrong, it admits it. Number 8, PowerShell doesn't get jealous when you talk about other languages you used to code in. Number 7, PowerShell always does exactly what you tell it to. Number 6, PowerShell won't ask you to bring your best friend to help you code. Number 5, PowerShell can hold something in memory longer than 2 minutes. Number 4, PowerShell can run for hours without getting tired. Number 3, PowerShell won't cruise the network looking for other servers to install itself on. I've lost the last 2. There we are. Number 2, PowerShell won't try to sneak any objects into the wrong pipeline. And the number 1 way that PowerShell is better than your husband is PowerShell won't give you a 3K object and try to convince you it's 10K. That's all I have, guys. Definitely one for you. Definitely one for you and one for you. Come get them, guys. And we've got the giveaways back here from Sapien. Some of you came in late. Sure. The Sapien guys were really, really nice. I told them I was teaching this class, and I wanted a couple giveaways, and they gave me 70 of these little leather notebooks and CDs with their products on them, and these training courses and stuff. So Sapien was really good to us this month. And that's all I got. On time.
Nice work, man. Good stuff.
How do you stop recording?
Stop recording.